Let's go! Yeah, the spring game is free to the public. I'm going to let you know how you can go and not only see the Tigers, but see them walk down the hill before the game. But what is the spring game? Is it an old relic that needs to be fixed? Because it can be made better, and I'm going to share with you why. Because there is a famous coach who has the perfect solution to this. So the details are pretty straightforward. It's free. If you go, they'll give you a poster and a roster card. Tiger walk down the hill at 10:30. Gates will open around 11. Get there early because there's limited capacity. Now, this is fascinating because what you're seeing here is a photo from the last LSU spring game. And notice there's fans there. We see Joey B. Look at the eyes of Joey B. And this was before we knew who Joey B was going to be. So really the only newsworthy item, though, was seeing the new LSU offense, seeing the new set, seeing 3 wide receiver sets to the right and Jamar Chase out left. But I want you to put your thinking cap on and think about how easy it is to get carried away with spring results because they do mislead. So before we look at the actual stats, I want you to see if you can remember anything from the 2019 spring game, and the answer to that is you probably don't. It was a closely played contest with the final score. Once again, this is the 2019 LSU Tigers being 17-14. LSU does something similar that a lot of other college programs do, is that on the white team, it is always the first team offense and the second team defense, and the purple team is the first team defense and the second team offense. So ones can go up against ones and twos go up against twos. So starter versus starter, iron sharpens iron. So that inherently makes the job of the first team offense that much harder than the first team or the second team offense. So keep that in mind when you take a look at these stats. And if you actually go back and read the buzz and the tweets from reporters at the time, there are a few players who you're about to see that we were told were going to be the next big thing. So yeah, if you go back and actually look at the stats of both Myles Brennan and Joe Burrow, at first glance, it looks as if Myles had the better day. Higher completion percentage, more yards, no turnovers, but Joe Burrow was pretty daggone good in the scrimmage. His touchdown to Justin Jefferson was crazy. The interception was more of a great play by Derek Stingley Jr. So, yeah, it's crazy to see this, considering what we know about Joe Burrow now. Then you get down here to the rushing stats, and Clyde had the best day, but Chris Curry was being compared to beast mode because he ran over a defensive back in Keenan Jones, who never played. So, yes, Chris Curry was impressive in this game. He had one good game against Oklahoma. And in his breakout season this season, 45 carries for 145 yards, and he transferred to Utah. So, based on what we saw in that spring game, I, along with many of you, thought Chris Curry was going to be the next big thing. Same thing here with D. Anderson, by far the most productive receiver in the spring game. 6 catches for 102 yards, but he was running with the twos. You see Justin Jefferson, only 4 catches for 35 yards. Jamar Chase, 2 catches, 30 yards. Terrace Marshall, 2 catches, 26 yards. It's so strange looking at this, knowing how prolific the greatest offense of all time became. But it's not just the offense, it's the defense as well. These are all the most productive defensive players, and only one of them is actually a guy that you would consider a really great LSU player, and that, of course, is Grant Delpit. Damon Clark, I hope he bounces back this season. Michael Divinity was a solid LSU player, but you see here 10 tackles, 5 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 forced fumble. You would think he would have been Khalil Mack. Kelvin Joseph, like D. Anderson, transferred. Jarrell Cherry, Keenan Jones, so on and so on. So, the spring game in 2019 was very inaccurate of how the actual season played out. It was a low-scoring game with a bunch of backups and guys who transferred and never really made an impact, had career games. This is not the first time this has happened. There are the spring game all-stars, and the most notable one of them all was Richard Murphy. Now, full disclosure, Richard Murphy actually turned out to be a very good Tiger, a future number 18, a guy that bounced around, I believe, in the NFL for a little bit. But Richard Murphy, this was the spring game that was heavily attended. You see 33,000 people, which is pretty high for a spring game. This was after the National Championship 2017, and Richard Murphy rushed for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 38-10 win over the Purple Squad in LSU Spring Game. And people are going nuts. That's Richard Murphy was the next Cecil Collins. I mean, he was getting compared to just everyone. And you look at his career stats, his best season was a season where he rushed for 230 yards. Is there a way we can make the spring games better? Yes, and it's quite simple. So what you're looking at here is a photo of Mike Gundy. Yes, I'm a man, I'm 40. Huh? This guy is crazy, and I love the mullet, whatever. Look, Mike Gundy, though, said something pretty interesting just a few weeks ago regarding the actual spring. He said there should be a scrimmage instead of a spring game. Give the fans something that is actually a little juicier than your own team going up against your own team, which, is kind of strange. Now, and I actually agree with Mike Gundy. There should be a scrimmage, and I don't understand how this doesn't benefit everyone. Once again, a spring scrimmage does nothing. You're going up against the same team basically every day in practice in a scrimmage format probably 4 or 5 times every spring. I understand. A lot of you will say, well, you don't want to risk injury. Well, injuries happen in practice anyway. Ask Kardell Thomas that very question where in a practice, Torrey Carter rolled up on him. That could just happen anywhere. This would be really beneficial for LSU this season. Number one, what Mike Gundy said is he's had so many injuries, he doesn't know if he's going to have enough healthy players to actually field a spring game. LSU this spring has had their fair share of injuries, and I do say this in every spring video. LSU is also super conservative when they're actually dressing guys out in the spring. If you're just a little bit banged up or tired, they're going to put you in a gold non-contact uniform. But even with that said, the injuries have piled up so much that guys have played different positions, have been moving to other positions just so they can just have a regular practice. Not even a scrimmage, just a regular practice. So, yes, it's hard to even put out enough healthy guys to have a real scrimmage. Number two, the scrimmage doesn't even have to be against a, Power 5 SEC power. It could be anyone, really. It could be Southern or Northwestern or McNeese. And I know that would be, difficult now because they're going through their season, but in a normal format, that would not be the case. I think, off-season scrimmages and, in theory, 7-on-7, which I've brought up in other videos before, and it always starts an intense debate. I think that would actually be a good thing. I do. I think players would like to go up against someone that is not their friends in a full-speed format. Maybe going up against someone else would be really good, especially considering, LSU this season has brand new coaches who are installing brand new things, and it would be good for them to actually see if it works against someone who doesn't know what you're doing. The other team doesn't obviously know your play calls. Look, this is really new territory for Jake Peetz and Durante Jones. Jake Peetz has not been an offensive coordinator at the Division I or NFL level. Durante Jones has not been a defensive coordinator at the Power 5 or NFL level either. So, yeah, I think it would be a good experience to see how everything rolls out. So, as I look towards this spring, I hope for this upcoming spring that the coaches will actually be in the booth and they're actually going through normal communication, because that was something LSU wasn't so good with last season. Not only communication amongst players, but communication amongst coaches. Let me know what you think. I would love a spring scrimmage. And I remember this, the Derek Stingley interception and the defense getting really hype. That's just really freaking cool. Anyway, it is Power Hour LSU. Boom! I think we're doing fajitas tonight, leftover fajitas. Since we're moving, it's kind of hard to cook if you're moving. But yeah, let's go.